Would you be free from the burden of sin? In the blood, power in the blood. You feel a victory win. There's wonderful power in the blood. There is power, wonder-working power in the blood of the Lamb. There is power, wonder-working power in the precious blood of the Lamb. Would you free from your passion and pride? There's power in the blood, power in the blood. Come for a cleansing to Calvary's tide. Therefore power in the blood. There is power, wonder-working power in the blood of the Lamb. There is power, wonder-working power in the precious blood of the Lamb. Would you do service? There's power in the blood. Would you live daily? Says to sing. There's wonderful power in the blood. There is power, wonder-working power in the blood of the Lamb. There is power, wonder-working power in the precious blood of the Lamb. All right, 'tis so sweet to trust in Jesus. Tis so sweet in Jesus just to take him at his word, just to rest on his promise, just so thus saith the Lord. Jesus, Jesus, how I trust him, I proved him o'er and o'er. Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus, oh, for grace in more. Oh, how sweet to trust in Jesus, to trust his cleansing blood, just in simple faith to plunge me beneath the healing cleansing flood. Jesus, Jesus, how I trust him, how I proved him o'er and o'er. Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus, oh, for grace to trust him more. I'm so glad I learned to trust him. Jesus, Savior, friend, and I know that thou art with me, will be with me to the end. Jesus, Jesus, how I trust him, how I proved him o'er and o'er. Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus, oh, for grace to trust him more. All right.
Good evening. How are y'all doing this evening? So we did a little bit in 2 Samuel and 1 Chronicles, like 6 chapters, I think, out of those 2 books. And the rest of the week was spent in Psalms. So what was your God shot for the week? Something you learned about God's character? Or some verses that just really jumped out at you?
I think Psalms 33,
Mm-hmm.
10. I can't remember what it said, but I remembered that in my mind. I hope I got it right, because my memory's not the best.
I was going to say chapter. Verse 12 is the one that most people remember out of that chapter. Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord, and the people he chose for his inheritance. I know one that really stuck out to me is Psalm 29. And when I was reading it, the first part of it, it talks a lot about God's power and all of that stuff. And then it says that, yes. Anyway, it says that he makes the deer give birth, or something along those lines. I thought that was in 29. I just looked it up. Maybe it was 89. Anyway, and it hit me.
Verse 9.
Is it verse 9? Of which chapter? It's not 29.
29.
No, Psalms 29:9. That says, the voice of the Lord twists the oaks and strips the forest bare, and in his temple all cry glory. Anyway, maybe it's 20. Is it 28? No. When I was reading it, it was like all of this power and everything, and then it says that he makes the deer give birth, and I'm thinking about a birth and how sweet and tender and all of that stuff is, and it just, I don't know, that just really jumped out at me, that even though, yes, he is powerful, but he's also very tender and caring and loving. And
It's kind of like he doesn't miss a thing,
yes, that's right.
even the smallest thing.
That's right. He doesn't miss anything. Was it 89? Nope, not 89. I don't know. I didn't find it in 29 either, so. Anything else? I don't know. It's there someplace.
Is it verse 9 and 29?
Well, that's not what mine here says. What does your verse 29:9 say?
The voice of the Lord maketh the hinds to calve and discover.
Okay, that would be it, but NIV does not say that. That's why I couldn't find it. Yeah, it says that the voice of the Lord twists the oaks and strips the forest bare. Don't know why this one is so much different. But the hind would be a deer, so it's I'm reading through the English Standard Version during the day. During the Bible recap, not my NIV. So that's probably what it was, and it just has something different here. The very first story that we read in 2 Samuel was about bringing the ark into Jerusalem, or bringing it, into Jerusalem. How was it supposed to be transported? Carried on poles by the Levites, right? So what did David do the first time? He put it on a cart, probably a brand new cart, probably new, the cows and all of that stuff, very similar to what the Philistines did. And I like what she said. We have to be very careful who we listen to about what God expects of us and what God, how we can please God and so forth, because he was basically taking his cues on how to do this from the Philistines, who didn't believe in God, right? And we have to be very careful of the people that we listen to, even preachers, because some of the preachers that I've heard can get way off on things. So that's why I encourage you, just like Paul did, to check up on anything that I say. And if I say something that sounds wrong or is wrong, but come and talk to me about it. I've had 2 or 3 times when it just didn't come out the way I wanted it to. my brain doesn't always, my brain gets ahead of my mouth sometimes, and it just doesn't come out right. Like Sunday, I was saying, what was it? I've even forgotten what it was about. That's terrible. Anyway, I said something like, that this was the only thing, prayer was the only thing that the disciples ever asked Jesus to teach them. And right in the middle of saying that, I said, it's the only thing that the disciples ever asked Jesus, and then something popped in my mind, and I didn't finish my thought. Well, they asked Jesus a lot of things, but the only thing they asked him to teach them was how to pray. And I think I went back later and made that more specific, but the first time through, it was like my brain just went off in another direction and just kind of threw me there for a minute. What was the result of bringing the ark in on a cart? Yes, Uzzah reached up. It says that the cattle stumbled and the ark started tipping, and Uzzah reached up to stop it, and God put him to death because no one was to touch the Ark of the Covenant except for the Levites, and only when they were prepared, and Uzzah was not a Levite. I saw a movie, and I have no idea what the movie was. When I was a little kid, I remember seeing this scene where they were bringing the Ark of the Covenant in, and it kind of tipped, and the guy reached up real quick to grab it, and God put him to death right then. And that image is impressed in my mind, even 60 years later. Yeah, and he thought he was helping. Very careful. Yes. So who was to blame for them bringing the ark in the wrong way? Anybody else? David, yes, but somebody else was to blame too. No, not just a single person, a group. The Levites. Because they knew better. I mean, they should have known better, right? They should have known, hey, this is our job, and we're supposed to carry it. I mean, it's spelled out very directly in the Old Testament or in the Pentateuch, and they knew that. So they should have said something. Now, I know David's king, and you don't want to, go against the king, but that was their responsibility too. And yeah, they should have said something. So when they finally did bring in the Ark of the Covenant the right way, what was David wearing? Yep, close. There's a linen ephod and he was definitely not naked, okay? He was covered. But Michael, however you want to say it, accused him of dancing naked in front of all the slave girls. And there is a song by Charlie Hall, and he says, "I'll become even more undignified than this," and that's right out of that passage. And you know, David wasn't worried about it. He could care less what people thought about him, because he was dancing to God. He wasn't dancing to the people. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with dancing before God or dancing in praise of God, even though Baptists would say, can't do that. No, there's nothing wrong with that, as long as it's, you know, the right reasons. Okay. So then David, the next little thing we talk about, or that we read about, was David, what he wanted to do for God. What was that? Build a temple. Why? What made him think of that? Remember what he was admiring his own house. He was looking around at his own house, and he was like, look, I live in this palace, and the Ark of the Covenant is out there in a tent. And that's just not right. So he wanted to build a tabernacle or a temple for God and for the Ark of the Covenant. So the prophet Nathan comes to him, and what did Nathan tell him? Go for it. Yeah. Whatever your heart desires, go for it. And then Nathan went home, and God spoke to him and said, what? No. You're not the one. So what did God promise David instead of the fact that he could build the temple? Yes, his offspring. In fact, it is a prophecy of Jesus, because he talks about that one of his offspring would reign forever and ever, and talking about Jesus. So what did David do? Since he couldn't build the ark, did he go off and pout? Yes. Everything that came in, any of the people that he defeated, and he got spoils from war, he dedicated it all to God. And it did say in 1 Chronicles, I like that. I want to see if I can find it. Okay. I'm almost there. Okay, I skipped it somewhere. Oh, here it is. It says, this is chapter 18, verse 7. It's talking about all of the things that he donated and everything. And right in the middle of this story about David, it says, Solomon used all of this to make the bronze sea. All of this bronze that came in, he used it to make the bronze sea. I thought that was really interesting to stick Solomon in there, and we haven't even got to, anything about Solomon, but it's just to let you know that that's what happened to all of this stuff. That he got up all the materials, the gold and the silver and the bronze for everything in the temple. I'm sure he got the cedar already. He got everything prepared so that when Solomon started building, everything would be there for him. And he wouldn't have to take time to gather it all up. That verse kind of jumped out at me too. So when God told David no about building the temple, what does that reveal about God's character? Anybody? Well, one of the things that I thought of when I was getting this ready was that God doesn't always give us what we want. And we need to accept that, because he's God, he can do what he wants. Doesn't always get us what he wants, but he also usually or always gives us something better. David was wanting to build the temple, and God said, no, you're not the one to build the temple, but I am going to give you offspring, and kings will come from you, and you'll have this. As long as they follow me, they will be, they'll reign forever. And so he got something even greater than building the temple. And we haven't got to it yet, but in the next probably by next week, we'll hear that one of the reasons that God did not let him build the temple. Do y'all know what it was? He was a man of war, a man of blood. And God said, you're not the one to do that. But Solomon, your son, he's going to be a man of peace. He had peace throughout most of his reign, and he's the one that'll build the temple. But God said, you're a soldier, you're a man of blood, you've killed people, and you're not the one to do that. So even when we're doing things, we know that it's God's will. If they have consequences, we may still experience some of those consequences. He doesn't change his view of things just because of what we do and things that way. He does love us, and he like I said, he gives us much more than what we deserve. Anyway, I think that was it in Samuel and Chronicles. Anybody have something you want to add? How about in Psalm? One of the things in Psalm 25, it had a bunch of this kind of stuff, but it says in verse 9, he guides the humble in what is right and teaches them his way. And then verse 12, who then is the man that fears the Lord? He will instruct him in the way chosen for him. Probably because I am a teacher, that just kind of spoke to me that God teaches us. And I did a sermon one time entitled, What is God Teaching You? What's God teaching you right now? Because he's teaching us, whether or not we're learning, whether we're listening. That's the key. But think about that. What is God teaching you? Are you not learning because you're distracted or because you don't want to learn or, whatever? Whatever it is, make sure, you're listening. In Psalm 2, verse 4, it says that the Lord laughs. Do you remember who it said the Lord laughs at? I didn't write it down, so. I'll have to find it. Psalm 2, verse 4. Yes. So these kings of the earth that rise up and get all of the other kings with them to rise up to go against God. And he just kind of laughs at them. And he's all powerful. They can't do anything to him, right? And then chapter 20, Psalm 22, Jesus quotes this from the cross. And did she talk about this? I don't remember if she talked about this or somebody else has talked about this. But verse 1, it says, my God, why have you forsaken me? And a lot of people, in fact, this is what I've been taught too since early on, that when Jesus was saying it, it was because God turned away from him, because God cannot look upon sin. That's found in Habakkuk. But she brought out a different viewpoint, that may not be it, but that's the first line of this psalm that is about the Messiah. And all of the Jewish people knew that this was about the Messiah. And they didn't say, Psalm 22. They didn't have verse 1 because none of them were numbered. The verses were not numbered. That happened much, much later. So when they would want to quote from or want to bring your attention to a particular psalm, they would quote the first verse. Of course, Old Testament, Jewish people, they knew all of those, memorized every one of them. So when Jesus said, my God, why have you forsaken me? He was just pointing to the fact that they need to look at that psalm or think about that psalm, and that he was on the cross. He is the Messiah, and he was fulfilling a lot of that was on there. So that's why he said it, not necessarily because God turned away from him. And thinking about it, they are one, right? So how could one turn away from the other one? And it's one of those things, like I said, I've been taught my whole life just about. And the first time I went through this, it may have been here, or it might be in the fall when we're in Matthew or John, or Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, whichever one of those that mentions this again, is when she talked about it. Have you heard this before? Was this something she said just this last week? Yes. Okay. Well, I couldn't remember whether it was from then or was it from when I read it before, but that I.
Do you remember what she said about that? I remember her talking about it.
Just the fact that he was quoting that from the cross to point to the fact that he is the Messiah, and not necessarily because God had turned away from him, but that he was just quoting this and that he was fulfilling the prophecy. So in that Psalm 22, it says that all my bones are out of joint, which definitely was true at the crucifixion. My mouth is dried up like a potsherd, and my tongue sticks to the roof of my mouth. My bones are all on display. All my bones are on display, and people stare and gloat over me. They divide my clothes among them and cast lots for my garment. All of those things happen on the cross. And I'm sure when he said that, everybody there was enough familiar with this psalm that they would have recognized all of those things.
It even mentions in verse 18 about dividing his garments.
Yes, yeah. And I just kind of jumped through there real quick. There's probably many other things that were in that. But he is the Messiah, and that's what he wanted everybody to know. Okay. Any other questions, comments?
Was his garment one piece? Was it one piece? Did that indicate that it was not like a beggar's garment? It was
Well,
expensive?
no, it wasn't expensive. They had this outer cloak that they wore, and that's also what they used to wrap up in at night to keep them warm. And that, they just basically said, instead of tearing this up and each of us taking a little piece of it, let's just gamble for it, and the winner gets the whole thing. So that's where all of that comes from. And they gambled, cast lots for his clothes or his clothing.
In reference to God turning his back
Mm-hmm.
on Jesus, in verse 24 of that chapter,
Psalm 22.
yes, it says, "For he has not despised or abhorred the affliction of the afflicted, and he has not hidden his face from him."
Right. He has not hidden his face from him. I saw that a while ago too.
Yes.
So, yeah, I think, whoever first came up with that were very sincere in what they were doing. And I don't remember where it is in Habakkuk. I just know that I think it's Habakkuk. Gene's not here to tell me, but I think that's right. But yeah, it's one of those things. I think it was taken a little bit out of context.
They also say that God could not look at us except the
Right.
blood be applied,
Right.
which covers all of our sins.
Yes. Yes, he does. Yep. Yeah. 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 All right. Anything else? All right. Let's stand and join hands, and we will sing our dismissal chorus. Slide that. You gonna turn me off?